Thank you very much. It's again a pleasure to be with you. I would like to focus more my intervention maybe on sharing with you a concrete piece we just deliver, a baby, which we can, I hope, be all proud. It's not only a UNESCO product, it's a joint one, and it can maybe help further to uh, guide our discussions and to help us also maybe to re-articulate our agenda, our different activities to ensure that we are all together delivering as one around this early childhood care and education agenda. My presentation will be focused on sharing with you the World Report on Early Childhood Care and Education. I may recall the World Conference was held in November 2022. It was in Tashkent, in Uzbekistan, not far from here, I guess, as a first high-level intergovernmental event in the field of education be organized just after the Transforming Education Summit in New York. The conference served as a platform for diverse stakeholders to discuss experiences, challenges, practice, and innovation. The discussion focused on advancing or measuring the advancement of SDG Target 4.2, which aims to ensure all girls and boys early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education, and in fact, preparing them for primary education by 2030. We have only 5 years. I want to recall. That's it. The Tashkent Declaration, which was issued during that World Conference, and its commitment to action to transform early childhood care and education, in short, was adopted, making an important step in advancing global agenda for early childhood. Within the Tashkent Declaration, UNESCO engaged with organizations. Technology again is not working. Okay, better. Within the Tashkent Declaration, UNESCO engaged with ILO, OECD, WHO, UNICEF, the World Bank, and other organizations in preparing a joint biennial review to report on progress on this SDG 4.2. At the UNESCO Executive Board, the 216 session, the Executive Board welcomes a joint report to report on progress, and on June 17, we released the Global Report on Early Childhood Care and Education, the first of its kinds. This milestone is the result of collective efforts guided by consultative meetings with UN and other partner agencies who contributed resources, provided inputs and initial concepts, and reviewed early the different versions of the report. Those partners include the 5 I already named, but we also are deeply grateful to the contribution from the global networks, such as OMEP, ECDAN, AFCAN, all the other regional networks, AFCAN in Africa, ARNEC here in Asia, ISA in Europe, and also the Arab Network. The first biennial report is the biennial series is co-published. This one is co-published by UNESCO and UNICEF. Now let me move a bit on the stage of early childhood for children around the world. Where are we? I was talking about the 5 years left. And where are we? In terms of inclusive and quality ECCE, we all know is vital for ensuring that all children have the best start in life, including promoting school readiness, foundational learning, and lifelong learning and well-being. However, we know also that inequality starts early, particularly affecting the development outcome for the most disadvantaged children. In countries with data, 30% of children are not developmentally on track, 30% of children. Children growing up in the poorest household and in rural areas are further behind. Evidence presented in our report indicate that children who attended early childhood education program are more likely to be on track for development. And this is something I'm just recalling, but I'm sure I'm in front of a convinced already audience. And what do we learn again from this report? The home and family environment in terms of importance. Despite its importance, only 56 children aged 24 to 59 months are provided with adequate early stimulation and responsive care at home. The data show in countries with data, more than 7 out of 10 children living in the richest households receive adequate early stimulation. You can see already the inequality starting very early. Parents and caregivers are children's first and in many cases most impactful teacher. We also know that. And it's important when we are building our speech to not only concentrate on the caregivers or on the teacher, but also to keep in mind parents are also the first educator. And we must include them also in the policy we are putting in place. The report has highlighted how parental support programs are enabling family policy. And we can also see that the parental support, how it is important also to improve the life of the young children. An important element of parenting support is support to caregivers and mental health, which is key to achieving optimal child development. And we can see how we are also linking the parental support program and the family environment, and how it's also contributing to the children developmental and learning outcomes, but also to go toward a more positive home environment and so. And in terms of maybe example, because it's always important also to share what works, where we are, we can also echo here the family policy, family-friendly policy, which was developed by our colleagues in UNICEF, which is promoting early learning opportunities through improved parental engagement and well-being, including parental leave. It's including also, and we can see it's including parental leave, it's including breastfeeding, also space for parents who are at workplace, access to quality, affordable child care, and child benefit, etc. And in terms of good example also, we have here the case of Rwanda, where this policy, friendly policy, is implemented by UNICEF, and we can see also how it's helping also the mother to continue their business and to provide a safe place for breastfeeding on that. What are the key recommendations we can learn from this first chapter of the report? In terms of action, what needs to be done? The government should adopt a whole society approach. It's not only responding or creating something for the caregivers separate to the rest of the environment where we are also living with the child. It's important to have this whole society approach. Second important point is also to increase and to improve collaboration among different ministers. We are here, maybe during this conference, we will be talking a lot on early learning and so, but it's not disconnected to the other aspect of early childhood care and education. It's important to always reinforce this collaboration between different ministries which are working or dealing in general with early childhood care and education. Another important recommendation is also about access to quality ECCE and to be more on the inclusion aspect. This inclusion is completely important for all the children, but also for the policy, for the learning environment, for the teaching and learning materials. I'm using the term teaching and learning as a, while we know also around this early childhood, we need to be more on a play-based activities and others. But definitely need also to be structured around some activities on the curriculum. The evidence we presented also in our report also indicate what we have in terms of policies and so on. Now, let us go to promote, how we can promote and prepare the young children for foundational learning. We are bringing here this concept of foundational learning, which is emerging more and more in this international debate. There are a lot of activities and there are a lot of actions also concentrated around foundational learning. The pity thing is today, when we are seeing some important gathering like the International Coalition for Foundational Learning, and we are listening to the discourse, it's a pity to see it's not very inclusive with early childhood care and education. Early childhood care and education is almost absent in this global coalition for foundational learning. And this is what we are trying now to bring on board, to show how early childhood is the foundation for foundational learning. We cannot talk about foundational learning without starting early, without starting with the younger generation. And this is one important message we all as a community need also to echo and to ensure it's included in all action related to this foundational learning. And we can see on that foundational learning that the world is facing a serious learning crisis. And this is, foundational learning is again a crisis within the crisis. And an estimated 37% of the world's children, more than 300 million children, will not reach minimum proficiency level in reading by 2030. We know. And the agenda post-2030 starts now. And as a community, we have also to get involved. We have to start working early. We have also to provide very interesting knowledge piece to be sure early childhood care and education will not be forgotten in the post-2030 agenda, but better will be prioritized also in that agenda. Many children are not well prepared before entering to school. We know when we are reading also the statistics, and we can realize how many have access to pre-primary education or to access to any kind of early childhood care and education service, we are not surprised for having this kind of information we are seeing here. We must recognize the pivotal role of early childhood, of course, and to continue our work on that aspect. To improve the quality of ECCE through valuing the teacher profession, now this is a big element also we would like to discuss with you. The quality of pre-primary education impacts learning quality. Globally, the trained teacher ratio has decreased by 1.5% annually between 2010 to 2012 to 2022. As a consequence, at last, 6 million, this is the consequence, at last 6 million more teachers need to be recruited to reach universal enrollment for only 1 year pre-primary education. This is important. Today, UNESCO also released a few months ago a global report on teacher storage. And that one was talking about 40 million children needed for education as a whole. Among those 40 million, 6 are needed only for 1 year pre-primary education. This is extremely important, and this is a crisis. And we really need to focus on this kind of data and to continue to build also the advocacy message we must all echo around the world to have our voice heard about this important element we have also to respond. Country example, we can see this in China, the limited provision of ECCE services at the village level deprived many left behind children. In response to this challenge, the China Development Resource Foundation established the One Village, One Preschool pilot project in cooperation with local government. With the technical and financial support from the foundation, local government recruited graduate ECCE program from local junior college and vocational schools as preschool teacher. and provided them teacher training and other professional development activity. This is a concrete activities implemented at country level. So we can change the game. We can learn from what is working in some countries. And now, let's go to another important piece, which is also the financing gap in ECCE ecosystem. The Tashkent Declaration, my colleague Livin was recalling it a few hours ago. The financing gap, the commitment from the Tashkent Declaration is 10% of national education, minimum of 10% of national education budget to pre-primary education. All scenarios to further increase public expenditure dedicated to ECCE must also be explored while prioritizing support for children of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged group of population. Another big number. The financing gap in low income and middle income countries need immediate attention from the international community. The financing gap for 1 year of pre-primary education is much more serious than in other levels of education. In 79 low-income and middle-income countries examined, the annual leverage financing gap between 2022 and 2030, which is the final goal for the SDG agenda, is estimated to 21 billion, or 40% of the total cost of achieving national target for 1 year of pre-primary education. Sub-Saharan African countries represent half of the low and middle income countries. They are 41 out of the 79, but account for the largest share of the financing gap. And only for Africa, we will need 11 billion per year on average. Here we can see data speak, and we have elements also to communicate and to nourish this dialogue. This policy dialogue must happen, and organizations such as OMEP and other civil society organizations have a very important role to play, also to recall and to remind the government their commitment and where we are. So those kind of messages are extremely important. In terms of what works again, because we love every time we are putting something on scale, we would like also to share with you what works or what could be promising practices. In Canada, in recognition of their shared commitment to increase access to high quality, affordable, flexible and inclusive early childhood learning and child care for children, federal, provincial and territorial governments signed the multilateral ELCC framework in 2017. I think we have also our colleagues from Canada in this, auditorium. The province of Quebec signed an asymmetrical agreement to provide funding to support additional direct service for families. Canada's 2021 federal budget, and this is what is interesting. In the same country, we have provincial approach and we have also the federal. But the federal is now learning from what is happening in Quebec. And the federal budget made a transformative investment of nearly 30 billion Canadian dollar over 5 years to build a Canadian-wide ELCC system, including 2.5 billion over 5 years target indirect to indigenous ELC. In the measure is coming from one positive approach from Quebec to now federal level, but also with a target for indigenous also in this one. This is also showing the inclusivity of the approach in that one. The data are also important. Yesterday, I was sharing with the OMEP Assembly the key data. All through the presentation, I shared also some important data. And the current state of ECCE data and knowledge present both opportunities and challenge in understanding and improving early childhood development globally. We were referring to this 4.2 which is the international indicators. But we know that we need to work more and more on data to build our messages and to ensure that we are also on good track. And it's not harmonized. This is not harmonized. The data sources are completely different. Sometimes we are using surveys. Sometimes we are using sometimes we are covering the global level. Sometimes we are covering just few countries. We have very interesting data coming from the mix, for example, from UNICEF, but covering a group of countries. We have very other important data coming from OECD, but they are also covering data for OECD countries. And it's very difficult to have this kind of comparative data when it comes to ECCE, outside what we have from UIS on this 4.2. So there is an urgent need also to work on this one. And UNESCO, in terms of action, in February this year, organized its first conference on education data and statistics. The day before the conference, an engagement day centered around the theme of data-driven approach to lifelong learning was held. During one session, we explored data-driven insight and transformative solution for ECCE. Here are few takeaways we are sharing with you regarding that one. Participants emphasize the critical role of benchmarking and data quality, highlighting the importance of inclusivity and high-quality ECCE measurement. As a community, we must also harmonize the different measurement and enhance our data comparability and develop new indicators for ECCE. This is extremely important, particularly when we are having in mind the post-2030. What kind of indicators we would like to see and how we can collectively work also to develop those kind of indicators. In this point, UNESCO is currently developing a framework for monitoring the implementation of the Tashkent Declaration of ECCE. And ECCE, another important piece for us, is ECCE Progress Assessment Tool for Transformation to support member states tracking their progress of the implementation of the Tashkent Declaration. The outcome are also expected to inform the next report. I was saying the report is now becoming biannual publication. At UNESCO, we are also leveraging the global partnership strategy we put in place in 2022 and which has today gathered more than 40 organizations, including WOMEP, OMEP, and others. We are also organizing ourselves to devote and engage, mobilize the community of researchers and scientists, including UNESCO chairs on ECCE, the Alliance of Science of Learning for Education, we have one also, academic association related to ECCE, and in September this year, we are organizing a congress on neuroscience and early childhood care and education. We are calling it Brain Sciences and Early Childhood Care and Education. This event will feature the Nobel Prize laureate, Professor James Heckman, along with panels by top researchers around the world. And we can share also, it's already available on UNESCO website, and you can see also the level of panel and personalities we are mobilizing for that event. This event aims to advance also and to be very evidence-based on the latest findings of research. We want to revamp now our advocacy messages. There are some messages we are using over decades, and we need new evidence. We need new element to nourish again our message and contribution to that. Before just concluding, let me finish with the most important piece, which is also how to expand right to education to include early childhood. Early childhood today is not a right. It's not a right. And ECCE should also be considered from a rights-based perspective. The right to education first enriched in the UNESCO, we all know, the 1960 Convention Against Discrimination in Education has since been interpreted differently. to apply from birth are reiterated in the Education 2030 framework, but it was all before. Yet, despite progress made in recent years, access to quality and services continue to be a challenge, especially for the most disadvantaged group. UNESCO produced a study already echoed by my colleague Libing also. And that study provides a global overview and analysis of the adoption of legal provision for free and compulsory pre-primary education to better understand global and regional trends. This study revealed that out of 193 countries reviewed in 2021, only 63 have adopted legal provision for free pre-primary education. And just 51 have made pre-primary education a compulsory level in their national framework. Only 51 countries among 194. Building on this study and within the context of the World Conference, UNESCO together with key partners developed a thematic report which examined the international legal framework on ECCE right and opened up a discussion on areas which deserve a strong legal footing. This research is part of the wider UNESCO initiative of evolving right education. This is an ongoing initiative within UNESCO, and we did our best to ensure ECCE is included and is on the center. To further complement the work on legal binding instruments, UNESCO, together with several stakeholders who are engaged in ECCE, work from a human rights perspective, formed a working group in 2022 to collectively and constructively work toward strengthening normative framework on ECCE through the elaboration of guiding principles. And my colleague Rajia, who is here, I think will be able to provide more information on the process, where we are, and how we can also all contribute to that guiding principles, which is a starting point to guide and to support also member states in their way of making ECCE a right. An analysis conducted by our colleague in the Global Monitoring Report team clearly demonstrates that in countries which have recently granted free early childhood education through legislation, there has been a significant increase in participation in organized learning 1 year before pre-primary education. There is a pressing need for an explicit recognition of right of ECCE in legal bindings international instrument. And I will leave you now with the 9 recommendations we issue from that report. And we would like to count on all of you. We know that you are representative from the global level, you are representative from the regional level, and you are also representative from the national level. Some of you are researchers, others are practitioners, others are managers of ECCE program and setting, others are journalists. We all need to work together to amplify this recommendation. More than what we have done up to now, we really need to unpack each of the recommendations to see how it can be concretely translated into action at country level. What is the different responsibility from the government perspective, from the civil society perspective, from the partners perspective, from practitioners, from parents, from the society perspective. How we can impact, how we can promote ECCE to prepare young children for foundational learning, how we can prioritize the most vulnerable children, how we can support parents and caregivers to promoting positive home environment, value the teaching profession, and invest in teacher quality. We talked about the number, but we didn't have time also to talk about the conditions, which are also very, very, very important. The condition of the ECCE workforce. This is also another important piece. How we can invest in data, especially for children younger than 3 years. In most of the data we are sharing, it's talking about 3 to 6. While we know, for UNESCO perspective, ECCE is starting at birth, 0, up to 8. It's meaning we are going even into the primary, the first grade of primary school. This is why we really have also to build this in mind and to ensure that we are having data for each of the level. How we can increase and diversify investment to address the financing gap in ECCE ecosystem. Improve the coordination of international efforts and partnership. And finally, expand the right to education to include early childhood care and education. Thank you, and counting again on your action to promote it.